Why, in my opinion, Resident Evil 4 Remake will be the greatest game of all time. Or at least, the best Resident Evil game of all time. When Capcom revealed the first trailer of the Resident Evil 4 Remake, I was cautiously optimistic, but maybe slightly let down. I don't know, maybe it had something to do with the camera angles that were put in-game, how Leon was walking. Things just looked like maybe they used a lot of RE2 and RE3 remake assets and threw it into an RE4 map. Things just looked a little stale, things just looked off. But I was optimistic. And then the showcase, and then exclusive Japanese footage of the Resident Evil 4 Remake game dropped, and I think it's safe to say that my opinion on the Resident Evil 4 Remake was drastically changed. I mean, we saw so much, and what we saw, in my opinion, was quality and caring for what fans want. I couldn't help but notice, first, the sound design. If you listen to some of the Japanese exclusive gameplay, you can really hear the stellar sound design that's put into the game. Leon walking on the bridge. Honestly, if you dig into my channel, you might be able to find a video of me kind of recreating this scene that I did with a friend of mine. I was captivated by just the squeaking of the bridge and how the wood is crunching and how everything sounds. I mean, it's not just audio laid over Leon walking. I mean, it sounds like each individual footstep was very carefully and very well tuned to how he's walking. I mean, you can hear the weight, you can hear the wood shifting around, you can hear the bridge swaying. I mean, everything is done so incredibly well. So we heard from the creators and the producers of the Resident Evil 4 Remake that the original game's spirit and the original game's layout will be still intact. They're not going to be taking the Resident Evil 3 Remake's alleyway and cutting out a large portion of the game, which was the clock tower. I mean, we are getting, so far from what we heard, the full original Resident Evil 4 game, but beautifully remade. And I can't help but notice that is so far living up to what was heard. I mean, in the showcase, we're seeing the original cabin, which is now called the Hunter's Lodge, that Leon enters cautiously, and it's expanded upon. There's a basement. I mean, so far from what we've seen from trailers and from the showcase, I mean, this is not just a faithful adaptation, but it is a faithful recreation, and they are putting their heart and soul into this remake. The original game's layout and map is beautifully redesigned. If you find some of the clips on YouTube of gameplay that wasn't shown in the showcase, there's a part where Leon is walking in, if you remember, the area where there are some bear traps and some trip mines on the trees, and you come across the guy standing atop the hill with the pitchfork. That area is now beautifully redesigned with this truck that is sort of swallowed by foliage and leaves and is overgrown. Seems to be another enemy or two in that area as well. And again, I couldn't help but notice the sound design. Take a listen to the handgun that cracks into the air as Leon fires it. So again, these areas seem to be nearly identical to the original, but they are beautifully redesigned, giving so much layer and depth with obviously updated graphics, with beautiful sound design. And there's these tiny details that I notice, again, similar to the vehicle being swallowed with foliage and vines and whatnot, such as small puddles that are beautifully reflective and destructible environments. While it may not be everything might not be fully destructible, there are sort of wooden planks that can explode and break, as you can see in the showcase when Leon kicks some enemies into them. What I appreciate most in games or in film and television is the small little details, whether it's animations or sound design or how 3D audio is utilized, or the graphics, the scenery, or how natural things feel. And one thing that I absolutely love is if you pay attention closely to the gameplay we saw in the showcase, Leon has about 7 or 8 different walking animations, running animations. You'll see him, he can run without the Silver Ghost, his handgun in his hand. You can see him jog, you can see him full-on sprint, you can see him run while holding the firearm with one hand, you can see him run with it holstered. I mean, there are so many small little details that may be overlooked by someone who's just looking forward to playing it without really having an eye for that type of detail. But if you really dig deep and you watch the showcase over and over, if you're into that, you'll notice some absolutely amazing, not only attention to detail, but perfecting animations and giving this game layer and depth by adding multiple animations. There's not just one running animation, there's not just maybe even a couple, there's multiple. There's so many things that I feel are giving this game life and sort of a breath of fresh air that we need in the gaming industry. So Capcom isn't just going for a faithful recreation of the original Resident Evil 4 just by level layout and the types of weapons it can use and the characters that are in the remake, but also they're keeping the small, minute details such as Leon's humor. As he ignites a cow on fire, you can hear him say,
"Kill me for the repairs later."
And also, we haven't seen any gameplay, but apparently if Leon is getting swarmed in one of the cabins in the village area, presumably the one that Leon kind of boards himself in the remake, he can jump out of a window and then he'll proceed to say something like, "I'll see myself out." That sort of depth of character and kind of reflecting the original Leon is very indicative of what this game I think is going to be, which is a very faithful recreation, but that's something that's also cautiously remade. They're not just remaking it for the sake of it looking the same and maybe playing the same. I mean, they are focusing on the small details that made the original Resident Evil 4 so great. So far from what we've seen from the first trailer, the showcase, and then the story trailer we got right after the showcase, it's safe to assume that they are very faithfully recreating Resident Evil 4 for it to be something that we all know and love, and it's not just going to be something that was, you know, blandly remade. We saw El Gigante, we saw Salazar, we saw the Verdugos, and if those bosses that are in the game that don't necessarily serve a huge part to the main story, I think it's safe to assume that a much larger character like Krauser is going to be in the remake. You know, a lot of people are worried that Krauser is going to be cut, and he actually serves a significant part to the original story, and that he's the one who kidnapped Ashley. So if those bosses that could have easily been cut by Capcom, such as the Lake Monster or El Gigante, why would they cut someone that you know, has a much larger part to the story and is actually behind Ashley's kidnapping? So I think, well, we can all just sit back, relax, and sort of wait for the remake to come out. I'm sure they're going to be updating us. I'm sure we're going to be getting a demo. But this is why I am very excited for the Resident Evil 4 remake, and why I think it will be the best Resident Evil remake and best Resident Evil game of all time. But of course, that's just my opinion. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if you want, and I will see you in the next video.